Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to address your council and viewers who will see this video. I'm a civil rights activist. I'm a homeless activist and a veterans activist. Is the illegal immigration. It's been the greatest threat to us since slavery. We have not had such a great threat. There was a war in this country fought around the issue of chattel slavery. It's called the U.S. Civil War, 1861-1865. And 740,000 innocent young white boys and men. And this is also 38,000 blacks, that is, freedmen and escaped slaves, or freemen and escaped slaves, died, suffered, bled for the matter around Black lives. That is our nation's highest moral ground. You know, you hear talk about the white boy. Well, that white boy who had nothing to do with slavery, in North and South, in my opinion, both were patriotic. They were not guilty. Yet, they had to pay the price over this issue of Black lives having matter in the United States of America and clearing this nation's stain off of the Declaration of Independence, where it says God, who was the central figure of the Declaration of Independence, endowed everyone with certain inalienable rights, and among these the right to liberty and the pursuit of happiness for those whom he obviously created equal. But the founding fathers, believing in all of that and actually going to war with the mother country, shedding blood of young innocent men from England and America over the idea that they felt like they were slaves to England, to the monarchy, to tyranny. And they fought. At the same time, though, they had in their possession human beings being held as living human property. And that was not pleasing to God, who was the central figure of the Declaration. And because they did not have the ability to rectify, because you know that the country was not born because of this issue. It almost didn't happen, but they decided, okay, we'll sort of make a covenant with God. God, we will fix this if you let us be a nation. Cool. They didn't fix it. And Thomas Jefferson said, when I think of the justice of God in the matter of slavery of our country, I tremble for my nation. Thomas Jefferson was the #1 mentor of Abraham Lincoln. This is what Abraham Lincoln was thinking about. And when he decided that God said that this struggle was not over states' rights, it was not over the economy, it was not over political disagreement, this was over the fact that the American people, we the people, are holding fellow human beings, fellow Americans, as living human property, and it better be settled. And Lincoln got his message. And January 22nd, 1862, he sent out the warning to the southern states about the Emancipation Proclamation. January 1st, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation. When that happened, everything changed, and God arranged for the Union to be saved. And that's where all of this is hanging on, that we must not forget in this generation that these 740,000 young, innocent white boys and men gave their lives over this. And Abraham Lincoln said something very interesting. He said, now, we must not let what these boys started, they moved it to justice so far. He said, we must not, well, let me just be clear so you know. Abraham Lincoln said this: it is rather for us to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. Those 740,000. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. That's our responsibility. And I said what I said, that this is the greatest threat to black people. Illegal immigration, invasion, occupation is the greatest threat to black people, or who I have learned to call the descendants of the chattel slaves and Jim Crow survivors. This is the worst threat to us since chattel slavery itself. Because if it is allowed to continue, we, chattel slave descendants, will be ethno-racially cleansed completely out of American society. That would lead eventually, we believe, to a Nazi-like extermination of our people by an organization known as La Raza, means the race. For their race, everything. For other races, nothing. They consider us mayates, meaning black bugs, to be stepped on. This is worse than being a nigger, and we'll talk about that later. But this is a threat, not just to us, but to the whole nation, because if they succeed in ethno-racially cleansing us out of American society, and particularly to where our vote no longer counts in national elections because their illicit vote overwhelms our vote, that will be the end, technically the end of the United States Republican Union. The American dream would have failed. The American experiment would be deemed a failure. The American dream a nightmare, and King George III will be vindicated that he was right to try to stop the founding fathers from breaking away from the mother country. The Civil Rights Act of 1866 is the progenitor and the Rosetta Stone, the parent and the Rosetta Stone, meaning the interpreter, as though a mother would know her own child, of the 14th Amendment, Section 1. This is the one that that is being used to justify what I call anchorism, anchor babies, which means, folks, that when a woman comes into the country without permission from proper authorities to be here, and gets pregnant, has a baby, or comes pregnant and has a baby within the geophysical borders of the United States, according to this document, they say that child is a U.S. citizen. Let me read it to you. Now remember, the 13th Amendment was to abolish slavery in America. It says, slavery in the United States is abolished except in prison. It still goes on in prison. That's the law, okay? When these folks were set free from slavery, chattel slavery, the Republican architects of the 13th Amendment recognized these people. Who are they? What are they? They're not slaves. Yeah, they're Americans, but what are they? How do they fit into society? They said, then we must make them citizens. And so they made them citizens. And what they did was they wrote something called the Civil Rights Act of 1866. It was ratified in 1868. And this is what the act says. This progenitor, this Rosetta Stone of the 14th Amendment. It says, and be it enacted by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled, that all persons born in the United States and not subject to any foreign power, excluding Indians not taxed, are hereby declared to be citizens of the United States, and such citizens of every race and color without regard to any previous condition of slavery or involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime wherever the party have been duly convicted, shall have the same right in every state and territory in the United States to make and enforce contracts, to sue, be parties, give evidence, to inherit, purchase, lease, sell, hold, and convey real and personal property, and to full and equal benefit of all laws and proceedings for the security of person and property as is enjoyed by white citizens. That is the Constitution of the United States. Most people don't realize that. there are actually, folks, 10 sections to this act, which we'll cover later. Very powerful section. In fact, it speaks directly to the President of the United States 3 times. You cannot find any other specific instruction in the Constitution so clear as you will find here. It also addresses the Supreme Court in the 10th section of this thing. And it also says that if necessary, the president or whomever he designates, if Section 1 of this act is being violated, if necessary, the United States military is to come in and to defend the people for whom this act was written. Now, they passed that, and then they begin to realize, you know something? There may come a generation in the future of Congress that will not like this, and they will vote against this, and they will repeal it, and these people will be lost in what those boys gave their lives over. That matter will be in vain. Gotta fix it. We gotta put it somewhere where it cannot be changed. Let's stick it into the Constitution. And so what they did was they came up with the 14th Amendment. And the 14th Amendment says this, just like this one: all persons born and naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. This is that. This, the act, is the body of the law. It is the skeletal structure. It is the muscles, the sinews, the internal organs. This 14th Amendment, by which is the skin of the body, the outward appearance. It is this document codifies this document into the U.S. Constitution. If you strip the body of the skin and you use this skin for anchorism, the body will die. And if this body dies, you, Americans, America, will die with it. And those boys will be dead in vain. You see the power of that? If you enforce the 14th Amendment as intended, not only will you simultaneously now, because this will happen, not only will you end illegal immigration, stop anchorism, stop the Muslim incursion, stop the socialist incursion, but you will also begin to make healing between the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners. Because when you begin to speak up like this, and the Black Lives Matter and all that, here's these white Republicans. Yes, Republicans wrote these laws, not Democrats. Republicans. That's why King said, all we're asking America to do is to live up to the laws you wrote. Republicans. And Republicans were white people. Abolitionists were white people. The boys who fought the war was white people. The people who wrote these laws were white people. The civil rights legacy does not belong to black people. It's not our legacy. Your legacy. You're the fathers of the civil rights movement. We inherit. We are the beneficiaries of what you have granted to us. You see, this is about you. It's about your boys for this cause. I mean, I really would encourage you to go to my website. Go to tedhayes.us. Scroll down to where it says illegal immigration. There's several topics there. One of them is called standing. Who has standing to the 14th Amendment in the Civil Rights Act of 1866? Who has standing? People who come into this country illegally, foreign citizens of foreign countries, or the chattel slave descendants and their children. You make that decision. That was by design. That was by design. Because remember now, after 64, I told you earlier, the Civil Rights Act 1964, to integrate and for jobs, in it was the interior of it was the socialist welfare programs designed to cripple us, because 1 year later, 1965, they passed the 1965 Immigration Reform Bill. See? And that opened the door for who? All the Hispanic, Latino, illegal aliens come rushing into the country, which Ted Kennedy said would not happen. And where'd they go? Into the inner cities primarily, removing us. In the name of us, they claim our birth certificate. And at the same time, after 1964 and 1965, the U.S. Congress, led by the Kennedys, Robert Kennedy, and particularly Ted Kennedy, in 1965, along with Lyndon Johnson, they passed the 1965 Immigration Reform Bill. And they did it in the name of civil rights. And Dr. King and the Negro leaders stood there and watched them bring in people into this country over our heads. In fact, let me read something to you. Anticipating resistance, Ted Kennedy, in arguing for the Reform Bill of, they call it the Immigration Reform Bill of 1965. That's where all this started. And on the debate floor, Kennedy said this, quote, "First, our cities will not be flooded with 1 million immigrants annually. Under the proposed bill, the present level of immigration remains substantially the same. Secondly, the ethnic mix of this country will not be upset. Contrary to the charges in some quarters, the bill will not inundate America with immigrants from any one country or area, or the most populated and deprived nations of Africa and Asia." Kind of looking in that direction, right? We're looking that way, but it came from somewhere else. In the final analysis, the ethnic pattern of immigration under the proposed measure is not expected to change as sharply as the critics seem to think. It will not cause American workers to lose their jobs. And when the African Americans or the Negroes tried to, if they even thought about dealing with it, they couldn't, because the argument would be, wait a minute, Negroes, we just gave you the civil rights. We helped you. How dare you not want to help immigrants who are simply seeking the American dream like you? So the Negro leaders had to go, whoa, and kept their mouth shut. And see, and that led to the door of of citizens of primarily Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, to come rushing into our country. Not coming through Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, U.S. Constitution, which authorizes Congress to set up the rules for naturalization and immigration. There is a way for immigrants to come into this country legitimately. But they bypassed that, and it just ran into the country. So it built up over the years of 1965 to 1985, 86, 85, and the debate began about amnesty. And Congress passed the Amnesty Act of 1986. Ronald Reagan, who was the lead guardian of our nation, he had taken an oath of office to defend the Constitution, allowed himself get out negotiated on this matter. And part of the bamboozlement was that they said that we will build the border so no more will come across. And we'll give these who are now here amnesty. Well, they gave them amnesty. They did not build the border. And because amnesty was given, these people said, hey, the door is wide open. Let's go to the United States, not to be of that legacy, not to make it the country that its founding fathers dreamed it to be one day, but let's go and rape and plunder for our country.
That's right.
And they did. And I know Ronald Reagan said in the end of his days there, and Ed Meese and all those top level guys that were in his advisory council at that time, admitted that this was the biggest mistake Reagan could have made in his administration. They knew it was wrong. But you know what? It's too late. Because as much as we love Mr. Reagan for his conservative values and for standing up to the communists and so forth and so on, he may have dealt our nation the fatal blow by that amnesty. You have the greatest moral cause in the world. You're just not using it. It is that cause. It is that cause for which 740,000 that cause for which 740,000 gave the last full measure of devotion. That cause. That's why he says that we have a great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take a increased devotion. You see. And if you stand up now, my white brothers and sisters, and you say to the illegal alien movement, to La Raza, you want the borders closed, no illegal immigration, no more food stamps, no more welfare. We rescind all anchorism citizenships, which we call presumed citizenships. We rescind the Ronald Reagan amnesty. Why? Because what you are doing is you are killing the black lives that matter, that mattered so much. That 740,000 what? Innocent what? White, say it, white boys and men gave their lives for. Now you have what Abraham Lincoln had, the moral rectitude to enforce the law with impunity. You can call us racist, bigots, anything you want, but you're leaving my country. And in fact, I'm going to give you 4 years to get your houses in order, to liquidate your assets, to begin to figure out where you're going to go back home. And over these 4 years, we're going to cut back on your welfare each year, your health care, your education. It's not going to be overnight. We're going to be nice about this, as Mr. Trump says. And we're going to help you. We want your leaders to meet with our leaders. And we're going to devise a revolution for Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua. We're going to put America in your country. You can help me to get my people to understand this by doing just what you're doing here tonight, putting this kind of message out there, learning this to the point where you're confident enough you can speak about it. And don't say you can't speak about it because you're white. You're an American. You can speak about it. You have a duty and an obligation to speak about it. You have to speak about it, because if you don't speak about it, you're going to die. You're going to die. You're going to lose your country. And those boys will be in vain. Make sure that those boys' sacrifice will not go in vain. And right now, if we continue to allow the illegal people from foreign countries to come into our country, to occupy our country, to take the birthright citizenship of the 14th Amendment whereby these boys died that we may have, continues to let the president and the socialists to destroy this country, and the Muslims and anyone else who's breaking this country to destroy it, then this generation is responsible.